Pokemon fans are possibly some of the most passionate people in gaming, and it's absolutely unavoidable that this review is going to rile a few people. To many though, it's felt like Game Freak have been completely out of touch with what most fans want. I absolutely do not speak for that fanbase. Yes, it has elements that are similar with Breath of the Wild, but they are much more subtle than initially meets the eye, and this isn't a fully open world game like that. I'm also keen to address some of the critiques on the visual and performance side of things, and attempt to articulate the more nuanced aspects of the experience on offer, such as the fact that there's actually a quite interesting online mechanic here. Is Arceus going to write you a love song, or is this a cash grab to get Eevee to evolve into Patreon? That is awful. Well, let's find out. The story of Arceus sees you, the main protagonist, fall from the sky and land in the lap of a professor who was chasing 3 Pokemon who were drawn by your presence. The titular Arceus is a mythical Pokemon said to possess the power of creation itself, and from whose realm you are supposed to have arrived. Don't be mistaken for thinking that a person ripped from their own reality, spat out into the sky, only to crash land in the middle of nowhere, Pokephone in hand, being asked to catch them all, might be slightly perplexed by what's taken place. But that is not the case. You, obviously, are made of sterner stuff, and this is where your adventure begins. After the least in-depth character creation ever, you'll have the initial choice of one of 3 starter Pokemon. Rowlet, the grass type, Cyndaquil, the fire type, and my choice, and Oshawott, you guessed it, the water Pokemon. And just as Wikipedia will confirm for you, it's the first game in the series to feature 3 different Pokemon from 3 unique regions. As you arrive in Jubilife Village, you'll link up with the pre-established Galaxy Expedition team. They are the clan within the region most adept with dealing with Pokemon, whom, incidentally, everyone seems to find terrifying within this game. Everyone, that is, except for you. To give broad strokes to the narrative, there are a number of frenzied Pokemon, corrupted by this same power and energies which brought you to this place, and much of Arceus will see you travelling to different regions, working with the locals to try and pacify them, all the while learning more about the deified Arceus. You'll interact with and engage with other clans, with their own political standings and leanings towards one another, as well as a few cartoonish antagonists, replete with their own introductory spiel. We'd expect nothing less. The narrative is strong and straightforward. You'll generally always know exactly what you're doing, and it gives a coherent and compelling reason for you to exist within this world. Definitely enjoyable as long as you can suspend disbelief when it comes to the main character not having some form of breakdown. Gameplay and controls is where it really gets interesting. I had initially thought this was a fully open world, but that's not the case. Jubilife Village is its own entire location. You can move freely from within each area, and you'll also find a fast travel system. The village acts as the heart of the game. It's where you'll return to update on your main quest lines. You'll also buy new clothing and gear, rest in your bed, or even partake in a few more light-hearted side activities. There's a training area where you can send some Pokemon for more advanced moves, a place to modify your 6 Pokemon team, as well as a plethora of side quests available via NPCs. One of the earliest items you'll receive is the Pokédex. This time round it's in book form with illustrated images of all the Pokemon you come across. Much of the gameplay experience is tied to this. When you're moving around the world and approach a Pokemon, you can press down on the D-pad to bring up your Pokédex guide. This will show you anything related to that Pokemon. This amounts to a number of tasks that you have to do to fill out that section. By completing these, you'll gain experience and earn stars. The star ranking system allows you to travel to different regions, but thankfully it doesn't feel like grinding. This is mainly because Pokemon are absolutely everywhere. Sneaking around in long grass keeps you hidden, and throwing a Pokeball, especially to an unsuspecting creature, will, especially in the early regions, result in a catch. And each time you do this, every Pokemon that's not unconscious will gain experience. It's a system that might split opinion. I personally like the fact that I don't have to waste time going through each Pokemon and leveling them individually. As long as they're conscious during a fight, they're going to get some experience. And as you progress through the game, you'll realize that you have to be much more tactical than potentially first meets the eye. Some are not nearly as placid as others, and battling couldn't really be simpler. You switch to any of your Pokemon, hold down the right trigger, and then using a nice touch of gyroscopic aiming, as long as you switch it on in the options, throw towards another to engage. Props to Game Freak for not having any load screens. Combat is instant instant and takes place exactly where the ball lay, something that I personally really appreciate. Now, battles are turn-based. By pressing Y, you can show the turn order on the right-hand corner of the screen. And as Pokemon advance and learn an affinity with their moves, you can then choose whether to do a move in a swift style, standard, or strong. And these change the speed as well as damage that your moves will inflict. It's all reflected up here, and it adds a decent level of strategy. Enough at least that you can actually put some thought into the move choices and how that's going to reflect on the turn order. It gives a little more control as well when trying to capture a Pokemon and not wanting to do too much damage. You might switch over to those fast, less damage attacks in the hope of not killing them and being able to throw a Pokeball. These also come in a variety of different types, from the early standard and heavy onto the feather ball, which can be thrown much further, and some more advanced. You'll learn the crafting recipes for these. Now, recipe items are gathered throughout the world. Not only can you gain them from combat, you can also throw a Pokeball at the ground and a monster will do the harvesting for you. I like this. It gave the game a fluidity. You didn't have to stop and mine at a region. You could simply throw a ball and keep running. That same perpetual motion can apply to the Pokemon catching itself, particularly with those less aggressive types. The crafting extends to more than just Pokeballs. You can craft various potions and items, as well as buffing abilities, and while I seem to have developed over the years a dread fear of using consumable items, the ease with which you gather and craft mean you can usually replenish any missing stock. I've spoken briefly about how you control your character. There is a sprint button with the left stick, but for all their skills, it's yet another protagonist who never learned to jump. And the same goes for swimming. If you're in water for a few seconds, they're simply going to drown and arrive back on shore having taken some damage. Damage is an interesting one. It's a regenerating health bar that's kept hidden from the player. With some frenzied Pokemon and others becoming aggressive towards you, you may find yourself knocked unconscious. And you'll wake up at the local camp having lost some items. And this is where the first element of online play comes in. If you go into the options menu, you can actually turn on this online functionality. What it means is that when you die, a small satchel with the items you lost may pop up in someone else's world. If they find this and with the lost and found mechanic return it to sender, you may actually get these items back. But this also happens in your world. You might stumble across someone else's pack. It will show you their name and then you can return it. You may then later find some rewards are available for you as a way of thanks from those players. In a strange way, it actually reminded me of the mechanics of Death Stranding. If you're familiar with that world, you very often come across what feels like the footprints of other players. This system's nowhere near as overt, but it does make you feel like you're in a world that's actually being trodden by other people. Traversal is made much easier as you unlock certain mounts. They're all tied to the main quest line, and they offer a variety of different ways of getting about. It's great that they allow you to access previously inaccessible areas and gave it almost a Metroidvania feel at times. Your ability to control Pokemon is capped at levels based on your star rating. This ensures you don't go out and capture a ridiculously high level Pokemon. By all means, you can do that, but during combat it won't listen to your commands. However, I was pleased to see that it was still possible, meaning there was a real excitement as you leveled up because you knew you'd be able to finally access and use some of these more powerful creatures. Perhaps one of the weaker elements of Pokemon Arceus are some of the side quests. They feel very much straightforward JRPG, usually involving you fetching a certain type of Pokemon. They're fine, they just don't do anything new. The game's received quite a bit of criticism for the Hisui region itself, with vast, sparse areas. It's where it's most like Breath of the Wild. However, you're never far from a new type of Pokemon. They are absolutely everywhere. If those age-old mechanics of capturing different types, evolving them, giving them unique names, and then creating a unique team get their hooks into you, then exploring this world and finding the nooks and crannies that those more rare species are hiding in really is enjoyable. There are lots of new faces in Generation 8 to discover, and contrary to appearances, there are quite a few secrets to find here as well, with each region housing certain hidden Pokemon, and with over 100 wisps to find, another design choice to push exploration, and it works. Arceus does feature boss fights. Certain Pokemon will have been frenzied, and you'll have to calm them through a strange mixture of throwing things at them, and then when dazed, launching your Pokemon in for attacks. It's the closest I think we'll come to the player actually being involved in the combat, and while some are better than others, I actually enjoy them. I think the biggest criticism you could level at the game, from a gameplay standpoint, would be its repetition. Just by its nature, you'll be doing the same things over and over, and certain elements, such as the stealth, perhaps aren't as refined as they could have been. With that said though, for those that do, you're going to find a really enjoyable and, dare I say it, quite a relaxing game. Taking things at your own pace, capturing certain Pokemon that potentially you never knew existed, training them up, renaming them, and then changing up your team to counteract the weaknesses of the next known frenzied enemy that you'll face, I personally have found incredibly addictive. The things that you do the most feel the most streamlined, and for me that's where it succeeds. Quick switching to your different mounts, being able to run away from any fight, fighting on the water and having your Pokemon. It's felt like a legitimate adventure, and perhaps that for me is what's been lacking from the series in the past. Overall, I give gameplay 18 out of 20, and aside for a few unusual button choices, such as having plus as switch to your mounts, the controls are absolutely fine. They score 18 out of 20. Next up, we've got visuals, performance, and audio. Arceus has its highs and lows in these areas. As far as performance goes, well, it's not always locked out at 30 frames per second. For 90% of your time, it's absolutely fine. However, you will notice the occasional drop. Visually, I quite like the art style. There are certain times of day, as there is a day-night cycle, where it looks much better. I really like the crisp night sky. When the sun's setting over the horizon, it feels great, but at other times, it looks quite washed out and potentially a bit bland. One of my biggest issues in the graphical department is the texture resolution. It's noticeable on the cloth of characters, as well as the grass texture, and there's a glitch as well that affects the grass. It's almost imperceptible, as it shifts for a millisecond back and forward at certain times, and popping on shrubbery is also quite prominent as you move about the world. The character animation also feels slightly dated. I wouldn't say it was bad, it's just never good, but it's a stark juxtaposition against the sheer quality of the Pokemon. They look fantastic, they move well, and they feel spot on when you're in battle. The same for me goes for the different mounts that you can ride. Textures aren't the only slight graphical issue though. There's also an anti-aliasing issue, especially when in water. This can cause some particularly prominent jaggy edges on the outsides of characters. As far as the audio and soundtrack goes, it's another area where it's taken strong influence from other Nintendo titles. Nintendo being the kings of the addictive sound effect. Those little audio jingles tied to certain actions that you do repeatedly. And here, there is more than a nod to Breath of the Wild. Music when out in the open world as well is more sparse, generally kicking in during combat, but it fits the aesthetic. A few of the songs don't escape the dreaded repetition loop, and it may just be me, but I can't help but feel like the game may have benefited from having some voice work, particularly as the characters' mouths are flapping away to silence. Feels a bit odd. I give visuals and performance 15 out of 20. The audio scores 17 out of 20. Pokemon Legends Arceus is going to set you back £49.99 or your regional equivalent, and whether you're a fan or not, I think it's absolutely worth the asking price. There is tons of content here. There are side activities, hidden items to be found, and thankfully the character customization options at least progress a little by the end of the game. Value scores 18 out of 20. Pokemon Legends Arceus has been a delight to play. Having gone in expecting the worst, it's a Pokemon game through and through with much more freedom than we've had in previous titles. It needs work in the visual department, but the important things are there and they work well. It gets a SwitchUp score of 86%. Let me know in the comments, have you been playing and enjoying this one? Or maybe you totally disagree and you hate the game for various reasons, which I'm sure you're going to let me know. Thanks so much to our patrons who enjoy the content enough to support us each and every month, and to all of you that just watch and leave comments. We really do appreciate it. For all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys, see ya!